So after watching the initial trailer for the forthcoming Twisted Metal show on Peacock and that new scene they released featuring Sweet Tooth singing the thong song, which is a very weird scene, but I just love it. I'm less than stoked, but I'm sort of on the verge of being semi-excited for the show, if that makes any sense. I never really played the video games consistently growing up. I didn't have a PlayStation until I was 14 or 15, but my fiancée Shanna and her brother Jeremy did. So when I got to visit their house as kids, I got to play some of the Twisted Metal games. I think they might have had 1, 2, or maybe even 3. But yeah, that was my first exposure to seeing the character of Sweet Tooth, with a flaming head. He was the clown with a flaming head and all that stuff. Was at their house. But I was never really a fan. I never really seeked the games out on my own once I got a PlayStation myself. And so the franchise kind of left my mind, as it were, until I think it was called Twisted Metal Black in the early to mid 2000s. Again, not a game I played, but I remember that game being a very big deal, very popular. A lot of people in school talked about it when it came out. I remember seeing the artwork, that black poster with the newly redesigned Sweet Tooth on the cover. It looked sweet. I loved the visual aesthetic of the game and the characters, and what I assumed at the time was a darker tone to the series, because before, the small exposure I did have to the series, it seemed kind of quirky and cartoony. Violent, but quirky and cartoony, sort of along the lines of Road Rash, right? But Twisted Metal Black seemed to take things to a really darker tone, and some of my friends who did play the game, they backed up this thought process. Said, yeah, it was a really dark take. I think it sort of acted as a soft reboot of the series, more of a, I don't want to say grounded and realistic, but definitely a more grittier take on the franchise than everything else that had come before. I don't know the full story, so I can't really speak towards that. I know it involves a guy named Calypso holding a tournament, so whoever wins this bloody, violent, car-based tournament gets a wish granted. I'm assuming it's something along the lines of that. I guess I could have researched it more before I made this video, but the point I'm making is, at that point in time, although I didn't play the game, I really started to pay attention to when a Twisted Metal game came out. So after Twisted Metal Black came out and had been out for a while, I finally decided to use the interwebs to research the game, research the story, research the characters, and I really fell in love with what they did. I didn't play the game, nor did I seek it out, but I was happy enough and content enough reading the stories and seeing how the endings of each character played out, especially Sweet Tooth, because obviously he's my favorite character of the game. Judging by visual aesthetic alone, let alone his characterization, the violence, his attitude, all that stuff, it just added to my love for the character. Then, a couple more generations of consoles go by, and then I guess in 2011 or 2012, whenever that was, they announced the remake of Twisted Metal, which I'm not really sure if it was a straight remake or a reboot, but there was that awesome teaser where the cab guys are talking about the best car combat game, and as they drive away, Sweet Tooth walks into frame, picks up the cigar, smokes it, and says it's good to be back. You all remember that teaser trailer. It was an awesome trailer. But again, I never played that game. But what I did do was, again, seek out the story mode and of the characters, especially Sweet Tooth. And I loved everything about Sweet Tooth's story mode. It was cinematic. It could have been a horror movie in and of itself. I thought it was awesome. Especially that twist ending where, spoiler alert, he ends up buried in the ground with the girl he's been seeking out all those years. I thought it was very poetic and justified, and an awesome ending for the character. Ending, right? And then we get this TV show announced on Peacock, no less, which is totally random and out of left field. Again, I'm still not really a student of the video game franchise itself. I know a little bit about Twisted Metal Black. I know a decent amount of the 2011 reboot or 2012, whatever that was. But I'm not fluent in the franchise. I just know what I like, and I like the visual aesthetic of Sweet Tooth and the story of Sweet Tooth. I could take a game based on his character alone, if we're being honest. But anyways, I'm rambling. The TV show coming out on Peacock. It looks awesome. I don't care what anybody says. All these diehard Twisted Metal fans, I get it. You're passionate about the franchise you love. I'm the same way with Friday the 13th and Halloween and Nightmare on Elm Street and Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Scream and all that stuff. But from what I've seen from the trailer, as goofy as it is, and the clip with Sweet Tooth, throwing homeboy around, knocking him around, throwing him on the pool table, putting him into the casino game, whatever it is, smashing his face against the glass. I just thought it was so cool. The voice was cool. The violence was cool. He seemed aggressive enough. He seemed big enough. The way the mask looks is perfect. Everything I'm seeing so far, I dig. I dig the weird, quirky, cartoony vibe of it. I think it's fantastic. I don't think a dark and gritty, serious, Twisted Metal black tone would work necessarily for a Peacock show. I think it needs to retain those fun elements from the earlier games. And to me, the vibe almost matches that of like Crank, the 2006 film with Jason Statham. Remember that? That's the vibe I got from the trailer. Like a hyper kinetic, neon, blood-soaked, road rash style, Death Race 2000 style TV show, which I am all about. Anthony Mackie's awesome. I love seeing him in stuff besides Marvel properties. I'm so sick of the MCU I could puke. But I think this will be a fun show. And I like, so far, I like Sweet Tooth's interpretation. And again, I'm not a student of the franchise. For the 7th or 8th time I've said this. So I can't speak on that, or how accurate it is necessarily with the character. But as a guy who's fanatically watched the story of Sweet Tooth from the 2011 or 2012 game, I don't find myself disappointed with Sweet Tooth so far. It seems like he might be a little bit less serious, a little bit less driven than in that game, because he seems like he's having a bit more fun in what we've seen so far than the kind of person he was in some of the other games, as far as I can tell. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I'm into it. I think it's going to be awesome, and I think it's going to be really graphic, and I'm hoping it's going to be really, really bloody. I think they're going to sort of keep the violence under wraps, and I think once the show comes out, it's going to blow everybody's balls off as far as how extremely violent it is. That's what I'm hoping. I could be wrong, but I'm hoping for that. I'm hoping this is sort of they're misleading people with thinking it's going to be cartoony and zany and maybe even PG-13ish, but I'm hoping it comes out of the gate swinging and it's bloody and almost R-rated and people's heads are getting cut. I hope it's crazy. And I hope Sweet Tooth is done justice. I hope he is, as funny as he seems like he is in the clips, I hope he is legitimately scary. And I hope they don't quirk him up too much, that he just becomes a parody of himself, becomes a cartoon, becomes an in-world joke. I want him to be legitimately frightening, but have comedic elements and have a personality that is fun and sometimes even charming and friendly to certain characters, but don't ever get it twisted. This guy's a serial killer who will kill you at the drop of a hat. That's what I want the Sweet Tooth to be. So I'm hoping that's what he is. And I think he will get the flaming hair. I think somewhere in the show, whether it be the first episode or midway through the first season, or maybe even the last episode, I'm sure he will get cursed with the flames on top of his head, and we'll get the classic Sweet Tooth. Maybe end season 1 with him lighting his cigar with the fire on his head. That would be really cool. But Twisted Metal on Peacock. We are in a very weird era. I think most people expected Twisted Metal to materialize as a feature film, if it ever did materialize at all, as any kind of property besides video game. But Peacock TV show isn't that bad. It could be worse. It could be a Disney Plus show. I mean, it could be. Disney would never do that, but it could be that bad. So we need to count our blessings any way we can these days with IPs like this. At least it's gonna do something to revitalize the series. It'll at least bring attention back to it. So maybe it'll get us some new video games. Maybe I'll finally seek them out and play them once that happens. Maybe there'll be enough interest to secure a deal for a feature film. I mean, who knows? The possibilities are endless, especially if the Peacock TV show does well, which I'm hoping it does. I will be tuning in for the first episode. I hope it rocks, and I cannot wait to see a living, breathing, real-life Sweet Tooth on screen. That is going to be awesome. It is going to be fantastic.